Hey, what's up, guys? Sid, how are you? Long time no
GM.
see.
Hey, what's up, guys? Yeah, it's been a fucking while. It's been a minute. Thanks for having me. I'm in New York for the Digital Asset Summit, so it's good. It's you caught me at a good time. You caught me at a great time.
I'm sure you're extremely busy.
No. We're not really. I mean, we are, of
Not really?
course. I mean, the usual busy, but not
Yeah,
more busy than usual. I always have time for shit like this, so really appreciate you inviting me here.
I got you. I got you. Yeah, I mean, who better to speak about Bitcoin-backed stablecoins than you guys, right? You and Piyush. So glad
Yeah, of course.
we're happy to have you. But yeah, I'm sad that I missed you at ETH Denver, man. I think
Same. I saw you having some fun. Yeah, I was like, oh shit.
yeah,
I think we sent him. I remember you sent me a Telegram message, and I was like, well, is it good there? And you're like, no. And then I was like, is it good where you are? I was like, no.
I know. It
It's
was
like
like what was it? It was like I think it was Friday. Everything was kind of like slowing down a little bit, and yeah, all the side events that I
not
went
even. It was
to.
like Wednesday.
Was it
It was
Wednesday?
like Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and everything was, I don't know, it seemed like it was slowing down, or maybe those side events were just not, they were just not hitting, man. And so I decided, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go to a museum. So I went to a museum.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I
Yeah,
saw that on your Twitter. That was love. That was awesome.
yeah. But yeah, so which conferences are you guys gonna be at next?
Ah, Jesus, that's a great question. It depends a lot, but listen, we want to try to be everywhere. Um, Listen, I probably think we're going to be in Dubai for sure and Vegas.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think we're for sure also gonna be at Dubai, and then for sure, obviously, Bitcoin Vegas. So,
Yeah.
and then
I
I
was
think,
thinking we need to have like like last time in Denver and Nashville, there was like this BTC L2 roast session. It's like a Tom Brady roast style kind of event where a bunch of people just got to sit down and just literally just hear roasts about other L2s and stuff. It's as nerdy as it gets. But I was like, for Vegas, this is the home of Rocky Five. Why don't you, I don't know, have like a fight club, a Bitcoin fight club? You have protocols fight against each other across each vertical. You just have a poly market thing ready and just bet on who's going to beat the other person out. So, I think seeing other founders beat each other up would be lovely.
that would be so funny. And what's actually funny is I think the one at Eat Denver, Boss was definitely mentioned. Somebody told me, somebody came up to the booth and they're like, "Oh yeah, people were chatting shit about Boss." Or not chatting shit, but like roasting Boss, saying like
No, they were chatting shit.
they're
Yeah,
chatting shit. Yeah, fair enough. Were you there?
but to be fair, I was
You were
there.
there.
I was one of the. I was the one chatting shit. But no,
Of course
I'm
you
kidding.
were.
I'm
I
kidding. I'm
knew it was
kidding.
you. I knew it was you, man.
No. I was roasting the hell out of everybody. It was no, I'll say it here because but I was basically I pretended to be Manib from Stacks, uh, and then I just used that because people aren't going to leave that place and think, oh my God, Sid from Bima was talking all this shit. They're going to say, oh, Manib from Stacks was talking all this shit, and I was like, I mean, dude, like I was like, come on, guys, I'm Manib from Stacks. You don't believe me? I'm a brown guy. I was wearing a beanie, right, so you couldn't see my hair. I'm a brown guy. You can't see my hair. I'm talking about Bitcoin. I'm basically Manib from Stacks. so, it was fun. It was a good event, and then I thought I was gonna get like blacklisted from like one of these like L2s to deploy, but I was meeting one of the people that had a BD the next day at like the Babylon event or something, Bitcoin Renaissance, and they were like, oh my God, you did a wonderful job. I was like, oh, did I? Oh, thank God. It's like, okay, good. I'm glad I at least brought some fire to them. So it was a fun time. But yeah, I mean, we'll see you in person. Whenever you guys are there next.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think I'll definitely be at Vegas. I don't think I'll be at I don't think I'll be in Dubai, but I'll for sure see you there. We have to link up this time.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Sweet. Well, welcome everybody. Hi Piyush, how are you doing? Good to see you.
Yep, doing great.
Amazing.
I
Love
think
that.
I missed the context, but
Yeah,
what
Piyush
was
is hearing a
what
lot of
exactly you
bullshit.
were chatting?
Sid's just being a
Um,
troll, man. Sid's
I'm
just
just being a
chatting
troll,
mad
man.
shit, just being a troll
I'm
as
just talking that
always.
shit. I'm talking shit. Yeah, I'm talking my Jersey shit, man.
Yeah.
okay, but you are in New York, right?
I am in New York, but I'm from Jersey, so basically the better New
It's
York.
same.
Don't say that. You're gonna piss off so many people who are actually from New York.
got you.
That's so funny. I feel like people from New Jersey and New York, they have like some kind of like beef towards each other. Oh, my state's better. No, my state's better. Like
Literally.
No. New Jersey's not better. It's the person from New Jersey. It's not better. All right, man. Like I'm just gonna be. It's an artificial beef. It's like Beyond Meat beef. It's like Impossible beef. It's like it's not even real. It's just. He's just literally just. There isn't. But
holy
thanks
shit.
for
That was
thanks
the
for having us
corniest
here.
joke, man. I loved it. I loved it.
It
That
was
was
it was,
amazing.
but that's how you know I'm great.
You're amazing.
Has anybody here actually had a Beyond Burger or Beyond Meat? I haven't eaten it myself. I'm a little bit scared to.
Listen,
I
I'm gonna be honest with
I
you.
wouldn't.
It's actually decent. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think they've like dialed it down to where like the texture tastes like has like a meaty texture. The flavor is pretty decent too. Like, I would say like if you go to, for example, Burger King. Burger King has like an Impossible Burger. I had it when it first came out, and I was like, "Wow,
Jesus.
this is so good." Am I giving myself cancer? Absolutely,
My
but
God.
it tasted good. It tasted good. The
Well,
sausage
Piyush is
links.
vegetarian, and like I make sure that
Yeah,
wherever we
but
go,
I
I don't
have tried.
offense.
But I have tried the Beyond Burger. It's vegetarian.
I
So
know. So is it good or
It's
not?
not
What's your verdict?
vegetarian, it's vegan. Okay. There's a difference.
okay.
That's even
It's
worse.
new legacy
It's
altogether.
Ugh,
plant-based. It's plant-based. It has there's
Yuck.
no like there's no dairy in it. Vegetarian would imply that there's maybe like an egg or like there's some kind of dairy product. Vegan would just be purely plant-based. So,
disgusting.
That scares me more.
I don't know.
What did they put in it?
Being
To make it
vegetarian,
kind of meat?
what's that, Andrew? Your mic is like very like I don't even know. I couldn't hear you.
I
yeah,
asked
same
like,
here.
can you hear me now?
Yep,
Yes.
perfect.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, that scares me more. Like the fact that there's no meat in it, but they made it taste like meat. Like what like horrible combination. What like witch brew did they use to make it taste like meat when it's
It's
not that?
wild.
I
I
don't know.
mean, just look at like the vegan cheeses too. Like some of them, I'm not gonna lie, they taste so good, but I'm like, how did you come up with this concoction? Like why does this taste so good and why is it melting like cheese melts? It's kind of scary to be honest, but if you
It's
look
like
at the
fake
ingredient
Bitcoin.
list, I'm like very anal about like ingredients, and the ingredients are even not that bad.
It's
So
like Bitcoin versus BSV.
right.
And the real deal versus impossible
One
Bitcoin.
hundred percent, 100%. But welcome
Yeah,
everybody.
I mean it's not fair to compare Bitcoin from like non-veg stuff.
Oh
I'm
yeah, I
Bitcoiner as
forget.
well. I'm
Yeah.
vegetarian. And by the way, egg we
He's a
don't
Hindu
consider as veg.
vegetarian, which is like he has to be vegetarian. You know what I'm saying? Like he needs to, like, that's very pure. So
Uh,
depends.
yeah, depends. I mean, the one who is saying himself is Hindu, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean I am Hindu too, but I eat meat. So anyways, thanks so much for
Sid, I'm
having
gonna
us
tell your
here, Claire.
parents.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. They eat meat too.
Okay, well I'm gonna tell your grandparents.
You know what, guys? This topic might be weirdly relevant to what we're talking about today because I feel
It
like
is.
Bitcoin-backed stablecoins might actually be the impossible burger of Bitcoin and crypto
I
because
also
you
think
guys are
so.
making dollars, but they're not made out of dollars. They're not backed by dollars. Dollars
And you
don't
know,
even touch
and
the
there's a
system,
lot
but
of
they
like
feel like
debate
dollars.
for stable coins being stable when inflation exists, right? Because you're borrowing
Hmm.
short-term liquidity. Like I was looking at, for example, like the Avengers Endgame. I was just like, listen, like I was just like one day, like just like searching up like I was watching Captain America, the new Captain America movie, and I was like just searching up the Wikipedia plot because honestly, it was such a dog shit fucking movie. I had to search up the Wikipedia plot to know what the hell was happening. So what ended up happening was I just like searched up the Wikipedia plot and I just started clicking. Sometimes you go down that spiral. It's just like, okay, I need to click this article, this article. So I clicked on Avengers Endgame. It's the number one movie. But then I was like thinking, well, this is back in 2019. It was the top grossing movie. I wonder how much it would have been after inflation, right? Holy shit, it's like a 27% increase in inflation. You lost 27% on the dollar over the past like 6 years.
That's
So
insane. Oh
it's a
my
lot,
god.
especially with what happened after
And
the
can I ask
pandemic.
what inflation measure are you using? Are you just using basic CPI?
I mean, yeah, literally you're just using basic CPI. You're using 27. You lost 27, like especially after COVID as well. You lost 27 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, and that's the low estimate using basic CPI. Claire just put out a tweet the other day talking about like what if you just compare it to the cost of housing? I mean,
Oh, that's even
housing is always,
worse.
yeah, it just gets infinitely worse when you factor in all of the things that actually matter to people and are actually going up the most. Like if you take the basic CPI measure, the most conservative estimate possible, it still looks bad. But
It's
it,
yeah,
it's
it
it's
very
an
does.
even more bleak picture when you factor in living in a home.
That's sad.
Yeah, I think it couples, and it is very tough.
Yeah.
But I think that's why Bitcoin like was there. And I'll give a quick intro. Piyush and I were both from Bima. We're a way for you to borrow against your Bitcoin very cheaply and be able to use it for different yield strategies on a platform itself. Very simply, why was Bitcoin super important? So, I used to work for, a guy by the name of Tim Draper, has over 30,000 Bitcoin in his, in his purview. He, basically went to the Silk Road auction, about 30, what is it, 30,000 Bitcoin. And, he was supposed to buy 3,000 Bitcoin, but he misclicked it by a zero. So he actually only bought 30,000. It was one of the best accidents he's ever made in his life. And I think one of the biggest things that he was really, really sort of, prevalent on was this thesis that Bitcoin is going to dominate the future. And he's investing very heavily in the Bitcoin projects. We were one of the first BTC5 projects he's ever made. And of course, I work for him, but that's a different story. But the story of why it's so important with Bitcoin was, you know, um, and Piyush knows this more than anybody, but I'm one of the biggest Argentinian football fans. My father's been a Maradona fan. I'm a huge Messi fan, and we love anything Argentinian in the house. And when you think of it, we were working with an Argentinian family office for Draper Associates, who was basically telling us about how they were losing their money in millions. They lost their millions 3 times because of the inflation rate that was happening in Argentina. So Bitcoin was a much better prevalent term for them to debase their assets and wealth. And it was such a crucial need for them, but they didn't want to touch it because, of course, of the volatility of Bitcoin. Right? I mean, we've seen the kind of volatility spikes in the last month or so, but what's been happening surrounding any of the sort of macro, which has been a little bit shit. But that's why a stable like USBD is super important because why do people borrow, right? I like imagine a few use cases, right? So there was the third co-founder of Apple, Ronald Wayne, sold his Apple shares back in 1982 for $800. That's worth $25 billion today. He lost out on $25 billion just because he wanted to make some short-term liquidity, and he gave up the upside. There's a guy that wanted to buy pizza for 10,000 Bitcoin back in the day. Um, he gave it all up. And what's something that should cost maybe less than $20, or maybe 30 plus delivery, ended up costing him $1 billion, literally in foregone loss, and sunk costs. So he literally gave up the upside, and that's why borrowing is super important, especially against your Bitcoin. You maintain the upside on the long term, but you create a short-term liquidity that enables you to use it. And people don't want to use Bitcoin for velocity. Like rarely do people ever want to kind of go against the trend of giving up their Bitcoin because they've seen these kinds of incidents happen in their life where they miss out so much and they're like, we never want to give up custody. We don't ever want to lose our Bitcoin. We don't want to have any principal risk in any sort of way, shape, or form. But that's where borrowing becomes super important is because these kinds of stables, they enable a velocity for these assets, which is really, really the entire premise
Yeah, Sid,
behind Bima.
can I hop in right there? Can I hop in because
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
understand the context of what you're talking about, or like regarding borrowing and stables. But for the people who are here and aren't fully familiar with how Bima works and how USBD
Sure.
works, like how come this is a Bitcoin-backed stablecoins space, but you're talking about borrowing Bitcoin? What's the relationship there?
Borrowing against Bitcoin. But yeah, I think the biggest thing I can kind of be very frank with is, borrowing against Bitcoin and borrowing stable assets against Bitcoin is a very expensive game. If you look at the traditional lending protocols that are native to DeFi, it's expensive because, you look at Morpho, you look at Aave, the USDC APYs are really fucking high. You're looking at 11% at the minimum and 27% at the highest, sometimes 30. And all for that against your Bitcoin, which is earning 0.7%. So you're paying 11% to earn 0.7%. It's a losing game, and you really need to make some sort of threshold or hurdle on your BTC to be able to do it. And we really want to invert that trope, which is we want you to pay less to earn more. So Bima is a CDP. We're a collateralized debt position model. So you deposit Bitcoin as collateral or Bitcoin-backed assets as collateral. You open up a position of USBD. It's a stable pegged to the dollar. It is over collateralized, meaning 2 Bitcoin in is going to give you around a Bitcoin's worth of your stable asset out. And you'd be able to deploy it through several different strategies that we offer through our earn page. So you could do your delta neutral. You could do all these different types of strategies that can scale on exchanges and fit your palette. If you don't like the delta neutral, you don't have to do it. We'll have other strategies that you can like a market neutral, whatever it is. We just want people to be able to borrow against their Bitcoin and use it for yield. And borrowing against your assets, I mean, that's the whole premise of what Bima is. It's like you don't want to borrow Bitcoin, you want to borrow against your Bitcoin because you want to maintain the upside in the long term, but you want to use stables today for whatever use case. And think about it like for a miner, right? Like if I'm someone of a mining organization, I'm taking like energy grids are really expensive. Typically I can't pay with my Bitcoin. I need to pay with cash. So what's the best way for me to be able to pay off my bills, pay my electricity, pay my overhead? It is to literally put not my Bitcoin as collateral, but my ASICs, my mining rig, my hash rate up as collateral. And that's a broken system because now there's a huge transcendence from physical collateral for loans to digital collateral and enabling Bitcoin as the sort of main premise for collateral. So you can borrow USBD or borrow a stable asset pegged to the dollar to use in whatever form and function you want to use it is going to be an important primitive for BTC-Fi. And, it's all about how do you enable adoption on this? I don't think anyone's going to beat USDC. I don't think anyone's going to beat USDT. And that's not our intention either. But our intention is that we need to create the use cases around it so that we can enable a really good market for liquidity. So, yeah, that's really sort of what Bima is.
And just before Andrew, before you go, I just wanted to highlight what collateral actually means because I think that a lot of people here might not
Yeah.
necessarily understand that. So collateral is
Sure.
basically something valuable you would lock up to basically back up a loan or a financial asset, right? So in the case of Bitcoin-backed stablecoins, what we're talking about here is basically using Bitcoin as a collateral to make sure that the stablecoin will hold its value to $1, right? To that 1-to-1 pegged
Yep.
ratio. So I did want to highlight that. Just
Yeah, for
go
sure.
on, my
No,
friend.
yeah.
Go on. Go on.
No, that's it. I mean, you're on the nose right there. Yeah, it's something valuable that you're just putting up and basically saying that, hey, by the way, I'll pay it off, but in order to kind of hold me accountable to pay it off, I'm going to put this as collateral to make sure that we're honoring the deal. How do you honor the deal? And I don't run away with stuff. I put it up for collateral. I basically put it as an insurance or assurance that I'm going to basically pay off my debt, and then I'm going to take it back, just like borrowing against a home, just like taking out a mortgage. You're basically doing that. You're posting something up as assurance for the person who's giving you money to basically say, all right, good. Here's the money. Use it however you want. Just make sure you pay me back. That's it.
One important thing which Andrew mentioned before Sid started was which is Impossible Burger? Is it the dollar itself or it's Bitcoin backed dollar? So I just want to share like different perspective of it. So basically, okay, like it's real dollar, it's backed by thin air. Even like now, Elon Musk is, stamping on it after handling Doge. Frankly, that happened finally. So on the other front, if you see Bitcoin is, I think the value of Bitcoin is, I think, never ending. Who knows what will be the end value of one Bitcoin? So I think that as a collateral and borrowing against it, or just like minting, which is again in terms of borrowing only. Let's say in our case, our stable, which is USBD, is something similar how you do with dollar, but with thin air. Here it's Bitcoin. So I just want to have an analogy, altogether different side of analogy.
Yeah, guys, thanks for explaining all of that about like Bima and USBD specifically. I want to pivot back to talking about USBD later, but for now, I want to I want to kind of broaden the context and why I wanted to talk about this particular topic, Bitcoin stablecoins and Bitcoin-backed stablecoins today. Because last week we ran very popular spaces. We were talking about the strategic Bitcoin reserve and how this is a huge priority for the U.S. government. It's become an even bigger news item just in the week after, because apparently a White House official came along and said, it is our intention to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible. So that's even more bullish for Bitcoin. And everybody understands intuitively why that's a big deal, because, Bitcoin's price is probably going to go up and it's going to pump all of our bags. But there's another priority that was kind of slipped in there during the big crypto roundtable that kind of got buried under all of the news about a Bitcoin reserve, which is that the Treasury Secretary said that it is his mission, as well as the mission of several others over in Congress, to use stablecoins to ensure dollar hegemony across the globe. Now, I think that's a really striking statement. It means a lot, but it also isn't necessarily surprising to me if you've been paying attention to the conversation around stablecoins, say, over the past year. Because there's a lot of people, especially in the US government, who see stablecoins as a very useful tool for ensuring that the dollar stays relevant. And it's something that they really, really, really want to push. So it's not just we want to acquire Bitcoin, but we want to ensure the success of stablecoins more broadly. And one of the reasons for this is because stablecoins, generally speaking, Bima would be a different example, but in the popular cases like Tether and Circle with USDT and USDC, is that these stablecoins are backed by US treasuries. And so the US government views stablecoins, if they can spread adoption and demand for stablecoins, then by extension, they're spreading demand for US treasuries, demand for US debt. And so that makes it a very complementary solution to what they want to accomplish with Bitcoin itself. So they continue extending demand for US debt using stablecoins, and they help to pay off the debt in the long term using Bitcoin and using their strategic Bitcoin reserve. I think the relationship here is really curious, and I'm also noticing that stablecoins they play a much different role in terms of global adoption and how they're growing. That it kind of flies under the radar if you only pay attention to the prices in crypto markets. And I want to know what you guys think about that, and where do you think Bima plays a role in that? Where do you think the larger stablecoins, their place in the geopolitical game, and also grassroots adoption, say in developing countries, of people using stablecoins? What are your thoughts on all of this?
Literally, Yago posted the video. Claire, if you can ping that one, I've DM'd you. So literally, that's a super explanation of the complete draft which was there. And how, as Andrew mentioned, there was a huge mention about stablecoin and how they want to make it enable there, in general stable, of course, not even Bitcoin backed stable, because ultimately it's dollar. So for them, it's kind of what my perspective is. For them, it's kind of reducing their debt, which at a country level, they have a huge amount of debt. Apart from that, when it comes to the other country level, let's say stable or something like that, I think that's where the core vision of Bima is as well, where, okay, we would love to even enable other stables. Like recently, even Japan enabled said that okay, you can enable stable backed by the bonds and stuff, but on crypto as well. So specifically on Bitcoin, that can be enabled on Japan. UAE has already these things enabled there, that you can do this stuff, which already Tether and other guys are planning. But Tether is, I think, hopefully is going to launch that stuff around July. But this thing on cross-chain stuff, forex on DeFi stuff would be interesting to see. I would say. And yeah, I believe someday Bima will be able to achieve that as well, where, okay, you will see multiple region-specific stables. And, okay, they can play a big role for the country-specific economies as well. Like I come from India, particularly. When Yago mentioned about the full, blown stuff about US Treasury is going to increase more and more Bitcoin, enabling more and more stable coin aspects to the treasury and other parts of it as well. even I think bonds and other things will be enabled by Bitcoin at some level. So I think being an Indian, I think it's super important, I would say, because if you see, like, India is the largest when it comes to the transaction level. It happens in India, though it's smaller comparatively, you can say, here and there, but it happens a lot because it's highest population in the world as a country. So if something like that is enabled here as well, I would love to see. And thanks, Claire, for pinging my post as well. I think, yeah, I want something that in India as well. And believe me or not, you might have seen reports that, okay, there are some oil deals from certain country to India. I can name it Russia and India is being happening on like Bitcoin and stables. So I think if they're doing it, they can add it as a strategic reserve. How they're doing it, no one has idea. I think there can be some third party arrangement. But they hold some stuff which I can officially say because I was involved with certain stuff long time back, which I cannot reveal. But yeah, they have some stuff inside out somewhere in India, so they can make it enable just like US made it enable as a strategic reserve. And I think, yeah, all the other economies are going to enable it. Even if you've seen, like, there are a couple of African economies, they have enabled recently many of their own stablecoins. That can be even done by Bitcoin as well, maybe on Bima as well. So that is something, yeah, I would love to see that how exactly that looks like.
One of my opinions, though, because we mentioned like certain African economies, say, wanting to launch their own stablecoins, other countries wanting to launch their own stablecoins. My personal opinion is that like most of these other countries launching their own stablecoins probably aren't going to see that much success because unlike the walled off, closed kind of banking system that we have today, where you can kind of force just using geographical borders and banking restrictions and whatnot, you can kind of force a population within a certain geography to use your currency. Stablecoins aren't like that. Like stablecoins are cross-border; they're all over the world, and so there's going to be natural competition over which currency ends up getting used with stablecoins. And we've seen what that competition already looks like just within the crypto sphere. And I mean, the US dollar stablecoins are king. Everybody kind of collected around Tether being one, and then USDC is like a distant second, and then there's kind of everything else after that in terms of using it as a currency. And so I see the US dollar stablecoins, if anything, just becoming really, really dominant in the same way that the US dollar is already very dominant across the globe. Like US dollar stablecoins will be able to spread out even more because it's something that the government of a given country can't stop from getting in. So I might be misremembering this, but I'm pretty sure Argentina, like, you're not supposed to be allowed to hold US dollars, say, within the bank. But everybody, say in Argentina or I know Nigeria is another country where all these people, they're using stable coins, USDT specifically, on the ground just from their crypto wallets, even though they can't get USD access within the bank because it's a better currency and it's one that the government can't so easily stop. Like anybody can download a crypto wallet and have, stable coins sent to them. And a given bank, like they don't need banking support or to even have a bank account in order to get that. They just need a smartphone and an internet connection. So I think that's really, really brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, Andrew, that, okay, I think US-based stablecoin, of course, will be leading, no doubt on it. But if you see, if let's say a country specifically wants to enable a stable, which can be, revolved into their financial systems as well, then I don't see, I think, near future in a year or two, though. But if something like this happen, that will ultimately even back channel the US-based stable coins like USBD. So that I would love to see, and even see a forex like environment in DeFi way, so that one stable to other can be converted. And I mean, ultimately there will be US based stable coin. I totally agree. Sid, what's your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that there's going to be a lot of futures currencies that come in, and I think when you see the future of the dollar, there's some people that have a thesis that, oh, that, oh, by the way, we're gonna have Bitcoin be a stable coin. I think that's fucking ridiculous. Like gold is not even at that level. Gold isn't even at that sort of component, and people are like, gold is the safest asset, but then gold just hit its all-time high. So Bitcoin's price, I don't think is ever going to stabilize, and you're always going to need a way to be able to, you know, I see that, there's a lot of sort of trajectory in that, but I think currencies should back themselves, in the same way, like you said, that the US dollar basically doesn't have any like backing to it. It's pure fiat. I also believe that it's even more the case in Argentina and all these different types of sort of areas, Central African Republic, and all these currencies that are adopting Bitcoin are adopting it because they don't have faith. They don't have faith in their own sort of asset, and they have more faith in Bitcoin. More people have faith in Bitcoin than they do in their own asset, and it's because it's immutable, and that's one of the sort of components of it. So. I think the biggest sort of roadmap that we would have in the future is probably going to be looking at just USD for now, and then opening it up more in the future. But I think you cannot. I mean, listen, US is going to give you maybe 70% of already market share of the overall kind of component because a majority of the world runs on a dollar, right? A petrodollar, or some sort of amalgamation of the US dollar. But then there becomes the necessity of like, well, how do we create marginally important yet radically innovative assets backed by Bitcoin? That's when you expand to the peso and the real, the lira, the dirham, and you just keep on scaling it then and there because I think our main focus is just listen, U.S. and U.S. Listen, like we're and another very important thing is like we're based in the States, okay? We're not like in Puerto Rico yet. I'm kidding. We're never gonna go to Puerto Rico, but we're not any offshore kind of component. At least for our labs entity and stuff, we're based in the States, and it's a very important optic because keep in mind at the end of the day, the United States government is not going to give it to an Asian offshore entity. MicroStrategy is not going to give it to an Asian offshore entity. They're going to give it to the homegrown. Why would you give it to the offshore if you could give it to the homegrown? And I think that's what Bima's strength is. It used to be a mark of shame to be in the States, but I think it's a very important utility for us. And honestly, it's important. Optics do matter. Listen, tech is a very important thing, but at the end of the day, the way that we execute is the most sort of like important sort of thing. And I think optics matter when it comes to this because even though the majority of the money that's ready to be thrown around in bloodbaths in China, the scalability of this, you need to come to the States. So I think we're a very long-term vision kind of focus, and as many currencies will come and go, you never know what's going to happen. But I really do think that while, I don't think Bitcoin is ever going to be its own stable coin, like some people think. I also don't think that there's going to be a time when we have the opportunity to, just focus just on the dollar. There are going to be people that are going to be creating several currencies to run their own, like, people create their own payment tokens all the time. It's the same thing with these countries as well. They don't all merge into one larger payment token. They just basically said like, okay, we can use other of these, currencies to back our currency. So I think there's going to be a Bitcoin backed world with these currencies, and futures is going to be important, but I think that's going to definitely come in our roadmap in a bit. I wouldn't say it's coming anytime soon, but definitely, we need to go mainnet first, and I think you're going to see some strides to be made with USBD in the onset.
I appreciate that you made the point that like Bitcoin, it will probably never become a stablecoin in and of itself. This is one of those ideas that I bought into earlier on in my Bitcoin journey when I was getting really excited about it. I'm like, okay, one day Bitcoin is going to be it's going to be like universally adopted as a currency and it's going to be stable forever. And I'm less certain about that now, or at the very least, that's a really, really, really long time away, I think. Like you said, gold already on its own, like it's less volatile than Bitcoin, but it still fluctuates. It still has its fluctuations because when you're dealing with an asset where you can't manage the supply of it, that also means you can't manage the price of it because as long as demand for the thing is fluctuating on a moment-to-moment basis based on whatever geopolitical factors are at play, then the demand for it or the price of it will fluctuate like on a short-term basis. And another thing that makes Bitcoin volatile in the short term is the fact that you can sell it so easily. It's so liquid and it's traded 24/7. So whenever anything spooky happens on the global stage and people are looking to like get their hands on cash, they can sell their Bitcoin right away and you'll see a sell off. And I think that nature of Bitcoin, that kind of volatility, I can see it dampening in the long term. It already is sort of dampening, say, compared to the really, really earliest days, but it's still really volatile. And so using it and thinking about it in terms of like it's going to be my transactional currency and I'll be able to hold it in the short term to like pay off a certain amount of debt, that's maybe not the right way to think about it because it'll still be kind of dangerous in that respect. That being said, uh, you mentioned Bitcoin being a collateral asset for the world, and I do see Bitcoin reaching that kind of status where Bitcoin is the reserve asset that backs up everything. It can be the core basis of the United States strategic Bitcoin reserve. It's something that you hold on to for the long term, and you know it's going to perform well over that time frame. But in the short term, you know there can be fluctuations, and so that's why there's a really important place for stablecoins, right? Like, I mean, let's be honest. Even when I try to communicate the idea of holding something for the long term, uh, to say some of my friends, right? Or just people close to you, your family and friends, and you say, you know, Bitcoin, it performs really well over the long term, you should hold it. Like that long term idea is scary for a lot of people. A lot of people can't even afford to think about the long term. And they just need something that they know will remain stable until next week so they can pay their bills or whatever. So it becomes hard to even convince people to get on board Bitcoin when thinking about it in that respect. But for the people who can hold for the long term, Bitcoin is an excellent tool for preserving their wealth, and I can picture that market being the biggest one for Bitcoin rather than say being the universal currency of the world being that. Although I would love to see a world where it can be that. I think Bitcoin, you know, unlike gold, it at least has the technological capability. It is digital to be able to scale for payments. This is something that, you know, Boss is trying to build the technology so that Bitcoin can scale in that way through layer twos and interoperable L2s, so that if there's any barrier to Bitcoin being currency or something used for transactions, it's not a technological one. Like it can meet the speed and the demand on that front. But yeah, I think hitting a currency status is still a really long time away, and it has to do with its volatility. Claire, do you have any thoughts?
I was just going to ask you guys what your thoughts were on just traditional stable coins versus Bitcoin-backed stable coins. And I did actually want to before we proceed with that, I did want to share a code with everybody for Zealy. For those of you that are here, the code today is Bima, Bima. So if you guys go to Zealy,
Real creative there.
absolutely, you got to get creative, you know. But yeah, for those of you that don't know, we basically have tasks on Zealy, which is kind of like a community building, community engagement platform, where you'll go ahead and do different things. For example, input a secret code, and then in return, you'll get a specific amount of points. So these secret codes, just to let you guys know, we will be running a new sprint next week. This space in particular and last space, the code that you guys entered will also be a part of that sprint. So you will be getting points for the upcoming sprint from this space. So just sharing that with you guys, and yeah, let's dive into the question that I asked. What's everybody's thoughts on traditional versus Bitcoin backed stablecoins?
I mean, Tether originated on BTC, but they didn't want to do anything on it because there was a lack of programmability. So I think the intention has always been creating this on Bitcoin, and you're just going back to its roots at the end of the day. But yeah, listen, I think stables are always going to be necessary. What you take in as collateral is very, variable. I think honestly, USDC, USDT are quite big. USDT might run into more legal troubles than USDC, but I think there's a huge market for it regardless. Every Binance has their Coinbase. That's the way I like to say it. And I think the scale of this is a super important thing when it comes to Bima. Why borrowing against Bitcoin is important is because it is to say that, basically it's like there's a lot of differentiation, but I don't think that this other stables are really competitive in the same way that there are bridges from other layer twos. I think that there's no real competitiveness between it, and I think there's an arbitrage opportunity for some of these stables as well. Because if you could borrow very cheaply one stable and then get USDC liquidity, that's huge. You're saving yourself a lot of time and money rather than going to Morpho and Aave. And I think it's a really good sort of kind of sort of scale for us. But I think other stable coins. I mean, it's a crowded market, and some are going to survive, some are going to die, and it just has to do with the times, the cycles. But I think the only thing that makes it successful is honestly optics, team, its execution. Rarely will it have to ever do with the tech. It has more to do with what is honestly the position that you're taking with it. But Piyush will probably be a little bit more tech centric. But I don't know. It's up to him.
I was going to ask you, Sid, so Piyush as well. So if we go back to like last cycle, what happened with the UST Luna crash? I think UST was obviously like backed by Luna, right? And then eventually, due to things that happened with like BlackRock and such, it depegged. Um, so like, how are you guys? How do you guys differ from the system that they had? If you're familiar with what happened last cycle.
Oh no, we're very familiar with
Okay.
what happened. Completely fucking different. Completely fucking different. So the two ways that people ran a stable in crypto, one way was the algo stable, which Luna Terra adopted, and the other is what we're doing, which is a very maker collateralized debt position model. Basically, this algo model was really at risk because of price shocks, and that's why over collateralized models like ours kind of scale a little bit more, because you don't depend on the algorithm to kind of just go back and forth and the biggest thing is that when it came to our CDP, it's much more sort of stable, no pun intended, but than a typical algo, because the way that you see the algos is that they basically are mint and burn, which are really fucking tough to do. Because basically, if it goes under the dollar, like basically it's saying that okay, X amount of collateral in is going to give you Y amount of the stable. If it drops below the dollar, then you're going to need to redeem it, and it basically just creates that kind of mechanism. But then what happens when there's an extreme price shock with one of these assets, or there's a depeg? You have a bank run, and that's what happened to Luna and Terra. But our situation, our system is much more different because we're over collateralized. One, the other way that we're also focusing on this as well is that we're actually trying to create a really good liquidation and robust liquidation system. And what I mean by that is that what happens is that the overall system, once it hits let's say Bitcoin's price drops by 30% plus, you will get your Bitcoin liquidated back to you minus a liquidation penalty of the drop, meaning you need to still bring back your USBD to pay it off. So that's the biggest kind of thing that we would focus on with something like that. Another thing we're also exploring is that we believe in Occam's razor. Um, I think everyone likes to focus a lot on DeFi, which is a very good avenue, of course. But Occam's razor is the simplest solution, is often the easiest. A lot of people don't want to give up custody of their Bitcoin, but they have it stuck in custodians. And these qualified custodians can actually help us in the tri-party agreement. So we can lend it to you on another side of our business as well. So let's say you want stables, but you can provide it. You don't want to go through a system that, you don't want to give up, you don't want to bridge, you want to wrap. That's another way. And then, of course, we would use an awesome bridging partner to kind of help us build the other sort of rails for on Bitcoin deployments itself. So that's how we're different from an algo stable. An algo stable is much more sensitive to price shocks and depeg risk. An over-collateralized CDP, or collateralized debt position model, is a little bit more long-standing because it helps you create liquidations and troves to isolate risk. One thing to note about our system especially is that if you, let's say, mint from collateral A, typically for a CDP, you would redeem from collateral B. Um, that's a bank run tactic that I like to call it, right? That's not a good thing that we want to allow. So if you mint from collateral A, you need to go back to collateral A. That's the way that we kind of operate and makes us a little bit different. So you isolate risk because there's a lot of risk in that. And while it does decrease a little bit of the composability, it also at least increases the opportunity that there's no domino effect or, one shock destroys the whole system.
Can you take us through the step-by-step process of what the stability mechanism of USBD looks like, just to give us 100% certainty that this isn't, say, a Terra Luna situation? Now, I am familiar with the Terra Luna situation. I remember researching that very deeply at the time that it happened. Like, your protocol definitely sounds a lot more stable than that. Terra Luna, they basically use this inflationary model where, when you want to redeem your UST, you'd get like an inflationary injection of Luna tokens.
Yeah. You'd
And then,
basically like even it out and just play the inflation game until it fucking broke.
yeah. And then at one point, the DPEG was so big that then the UST Luna token, or excuse me, the Luna token just ended up hyperinflating when people went in with a bunch of redemptions, and there just wasn't the liquidity to meet that. So then the thing literally dropped 99.9%, like one of the craziest events crypto's ever seen.
It
So
was insane.
yeah,
Yep.
it
60
was
billion
incredible to
wiped
watch.
out. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it completely went to nothing. But in any case, I wanted to ask about your model. So, as far as I understand it, it's basically just a Bitcoin-backed loan model. So, I'm going to give
Yeah.
you 2 Bitcoin. It's going to get locked up in some vault. You're going to send me 1 Bitcoin worth of USBD back.
Yep.
Now that Bitcoin needs to maintain its collateral ratio, however, just like any typical loan. And so if
Correct.
the Bitcoin, let's say it crosses the collateral ratio, I'm not sure what it is, you can tell me, but let's say, I don't know, it's 80% loan to value. I think I'm getting that right. It's like it goes from 50% up to 80%, and it's like ready to liquidate.
Right.
What does the liquidation process look like? Like, where does the Bitcoin go after? And what happens to my stables that I'm already holding?
Yeah. Great question. So we do never do any clawbacks because that's a piece of shit and kind of service. We don't claw back your, assets and stuff. That's not how the space works. But what we do is we basically say that, minus the LTV, the difference in the LTV, will send it back to you in the form of your Bitcoin. So your Bitcoin is sent back to you minus the liquidation penalty, which is there to keep your assets stable, and it's calculated based on the actual price of Bitcoin. So, or rather, the price of the assets that you took out. So your USBD is basically opened up that way. However, another thing that's also there is we have a stability pool, very reminiscent of Liquidity. So basically, other people can basically deposit their USBD into the stability pool and pay off your loans if you can't bring your USBD back and make you net zero. So that's the biggest sort of component about our, and then we get the Bitcoin at a collateral, which is there. And the way that the liquidation works is that at the minimum collateral ratio, the Bitcoin is returned back to you minus the liquidation penalty. It is locked in the smart contract until you pay off that loan. And if you don't pay off that loan, somebody from the stability pool will pay it off and get your Bitcoin at a discount and make you solvent. That's how it works. So it's really just honestly like a waterfall chart of just risk that way. So it's a pretty simple way, pretty simple manner. But we believe in Occam's razor.
Okay, so that's cool. Can you close the loop on that for me then? So with the stability pool, what are people putting into the stability pool, and
Yeah,
what incentivizes them to put money into this stability pool?
I mean, buying Bitcoin at a discount is always an awesome opportunity. So imagine like you're kind of like shorting Bitcoin and buying Bitcoin when it's low so that you can hold it and in the hopes that it goes back up again, which is awesome, you know? So basically, they'd be putting USBD into the stability pool, and they can do this in two ways. They can either borrow using the typical CDP with their own Bitcoin, or what they could do is they could go to an exchange and buy USBD and then put that to use in the system as well. So the stability pool is really USBD centric.
So, and I was wondering if you could also just like in a very simplified explanation talk about that I think you were saying like the over collateralized debt position model. Like what do you mean by like over collateralization? Like what does that actually like look like?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're one to one with Bitcoin, that's so crazy because Bitcoin is an extremely volatile asset, right? We want to create a lot of assurance such that if Bitcoin price drops by 30%, your assets are still worth $1, you know? So that's
Right.
why we over collateralize it. We make sure that these volatile assets, they are like have a premium on them so that basically you put in your Bitcoin, you're extremely safe with your dollars. That's what the basic premise of the value of the stable is. When you mint USBD through this model, you basically have 2 Bitcoins worth of assets backing it, such that even if it eliminates by 50%, you'd still be covered. So it's just a really good way for you to be safe with your value of your stables. Stables should be stable. That's in the name.
I gotcha. So basically like you would on the user end of things, you would be charging me a little bit extra or like to actually mint USBD or how would that work?
We have a minting fee and an interest fee, but we don't charge you anything for the over collateralization. It's up to you for your LT loan to value, right? But we would not be charging you for your safety. Like that's the worst thing. That's integrated into our system. Only thing you would pay to mint USBD is a minting fee and then an interest fee, right? You're basically going and borrowing a position against Bitcoin. So that's
Okay.
the only things that you would pay.
So how are you guys covering the fees for that?
So covering the fees for which?
The over collateralization element.
There are no fees involved in that. You basically mint USBD. The fees are on USBD that you mint. We don't touch the Bitcoin.
Okay. We're gonna have to talk about this
So I
in
mean,
more detail because
yeah,
I'm kind of
the,
lost
the
here.
the gas fees, of course, user have to pay
Oh,
for.
the gas fee. Yeah, users have to pay.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, that
yeah.
makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, whatever Sid said, I'm totally aligned because whenever someone talk about Terra Luna, I see my crash like 1/4 of Matic token, what I have got when I was in Polygon. So yeah, bad times. But yeah, I think I totally agree when it comes to like heavy on business rather than technical front. But either way, we are aligned with both. That's where we have been through 4 audits. And yeah, I mean, both the sides has to be sorted at some level. So things have been taken care of.
Yeah, no, it seems like you guys most definitely have your bases covered. Lot more secure than the model that UST Luna was following for sure. I got burned. I got burned with that last cycle. I actually what was funny was it's funny now, but what happened was I decided I was like, you know what, I'm gonna stake my UST. I don't plan on cashing this out. Like let me, make another 500-600 bucks a month from staking my UST. And so I staked it, and literally the day after we had like the Black Swan event. And I was like, there's no way that this is my luck. And so I'm seeing, UST
Three
DPEGs.
days for me.
Yeah, it was I was like I was in such a chaotic state when that happened. Like it really But then once you sell and you lose that money, you're like, wow, these are just like numbers. Like these are literally just like numbers. I had to like shift my perception and my belief system there. That was like the only way I could make it through that. But yeah, I just like watched it depeg and it went down to like zero point 0.6 and then went back up to like 0.93. And I was like, that's my exit. I'm down. I'm out. I'm out. So I sold, I lost a lot during that time, but hey, I know a lot of people did. I know that was really, really difficult for a lot of people. So, yeah. But Andrew, your hand is up, my friend.
First of all, Claire, that's really rough. It sounds like you had your moment where you said, "Man, I should have cashed out instead of taking a screenshot."
100%. I
Yeah.
still think back to that day. Not gonna lie.
No, that sounds brutal. I remember watching it in real time, and I like honestly, it's the most memorable moment in crypto for me so far, even more memorable than FTX. Like that crash,
100%.
yeah,
It was
unbelievable.
insane. Yeah.
In any
Literally, I
case,
was sleeping that time.
I'm glad. I'm glad you didn't have to experience that, Piyush. I was working and I was
Yeah.
like, how am I supposed to work? How am I supposed to work? How am I supposed to watch the charts? What am I supposed to do? I was losing my mind. So I'm glad you
But
were
yeah, for
sleeping through
next
that.
3 days, I haven't slept. That's another scenario.
True. That's true. That's also true. I'm sure once you woke up, you're like, there's no way this happened. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
mean,
I
what's
mean, I was kind of enjoying the show because I was working as a journalist at the time, and so I was putting out a bunch of like really quick articles about everything that was happening, and like it was my job to keep watching the story, and I was making a bunch of money in the process because I got paid by the article. So that I was rolling in the dough at that time while everybody else was just like collapsing, watching their portfolios like melt. So I was it was so amusing for me, but at the same time like utterly shocking. Anyway, in any case, I want to get off of Carolina for a second. I have half of a story to tell, and then it like kind of leads into a question. So for me, I kind of, as I've made Claire painfully aware of, I am basically a Bitcoin maxi, and especially in my history, uh, I was really like a hard line maxi in the past where like I kind of dismissed a lot of the other functionality that was going on in crypto. I'd hear about DeFi and I'd be like, oh, well, what's the point of that? I don't need any of that DeFi hogwash sorcery or whatever's going on in Ethereum land. Like I can go and get whatever financial services I want, like say even in the CeFi realm, like that stuff is coming to life. And my example of that for me was over here in Canada, we had a company called Ledin. But we still do have the company Ledin here in Canada, which it's a Bitcoin financial services company, and they let you uh, deposit your Bitcoin or your USDC, earn a yield, or you could borrow against your Bitcoin, like take out a loan and like used modest forms of leverage in that respect. And so they offer a service, particularly when it comes to borrowing against your Bitcoin. It's very similar to what Bima are offering today, but there's structural differences, of course. And one of the things that woke me up to why offering these things in a DeFi context can be very important was after the FTX collapse, when the Canadian government decided that you don't get to have that anymore. So I got a notification in my inbox from Ledin one day that the Bitcoin, say, savings deposit account was shutting down. The USDC yield account, the savings account was shutting down, and you also weren't allowed to take out like Bitcoin 2x borrowing positions or like really, really fierce forms of leverage. So like we lost the majority of the services that Ledin offered to Canadians were now shut down because the Canadian government, after the FTX thing, they decided um, anything that says the word crypto and yield, we want to get rid of it because it's probably a scam and it can't work. Now, to some respect, yeah, I mean, there is some scamminess in crypto, but some of the stuff actually did work, and like the financial aspect of it, there was no real risk involved, especially with the way Ledin was doing certain things. So with the Bitcoin-backed loans, for example, so you could deposit your USDC, and then they would pay you an interest rate based on the loans that they were already giving out to their other borrowers. So like they would give out a loan to other borrowers, they'd charge 11%, and then they'd pay the people who are depositing USDC with them 8%, and they would profit off of the difference. And every loan was over collateralized, every loan was backed by BTC. And so the whole thing was covered like end to end, and it actually made sense as a business model for them. But all of a sudden, this really good valuable use case that was provided in the CeFi realm for like earning yield on your USDC with Ledin. This was axed from Canadian companies. Like as a Canadian, I cannot go and use CeFi to earn yield on stablecoins anymore. That's gone. And so that was a wake up moment for me because then I realized, wait a second, if I want yield or if I want to access some of these services, say with my Bitcoin or with my stables, I can only use DeFi now. Like all of the major platforms I know of, like they all sent emails at the same time. They're like, yeah, we can't do this anymore. Canadian regulators won't let us. And so when I hear about what Bima is offering with their, like, say, Bitcoin borrowing product and whatnot, one of the things that's really exciting to me about this is that this is all on chain and this is all happening in the DeFi realm. And this is something that's a lot harder to, say, shut down. And that's going to be global and everywhere and that everybody can access, irrespective of what, say, the authorities on high will end up deciding. This is all permission. These are permissionless systems that we kind of write and then we let them out into the wild and then they take on a life of their own. And so, to piggyback off of that and then ask Bima, say, a couple of questions. First of all, what do you guys think the implications are of introducing a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin as opposed to U.S. Treasury-backed stablecoins, which are ultimately, say, run by banks, run by Cantor Fitzgerald, run by Bank of New York Mellon, who backs, say, the Circle stablecoin, right? Like these stablecoins are ultimately very centralized, whereas what you guys are providing are backed by a decentralized asset. The second question is, how functionally do does USBD stablecoin differ in terms of the yield that it offers, or the interest that it charges to people borrowing USBD, if there's any interest at all? Because that's how it would work when I work in the CeFi realm. If I'm trying to borrow against my Bitcoin, I gotta pay a yield, or I gotta pay an interest rate, right? I gotta pay back the loan in that sense. So, like, what are some of the structural differences there from operating in the DeFi realm as opposed to the CeFi realm?
Yeah, I think a few things. One thing that you said, which was, what do I do if I have a bank? Like, what's the difference between the treasury-backed ones versus Bitcoin-backed ones? And the answer to that is basically that, the Bitcoin-backed ones are here to stay, and I think it's something that the U.S. is going to prefer. I think something that a majority of banks are going to now adopt. And I think that you're going to see a lot of scalability with that because we're not just confined to one domicile, right? I think that's one thing. Despite being pegged to the strongest, quote unquote, strongest currency, we're not pegged to a specific domicile that you might see with some of these big banks. And we could work with a wide variety of places that are now adopting Bitcoin to kind of scale that because it's a long-term asset. And then the second thing is that we would charge around 1% to 2%, 1% to 3% depending on borrowing interest, to like interest in terms of demand, borrowing demand, in terms of the variability of it. But that's really sort of how we would charge it. We would focus a lot on kind of pushing the limits of our system to make sure that we can get people in the billions and masses to kind of get onto this. We want to invert that trope, like I said. It comes back to Morpho Ave. Good luck getting USDC against your Bitcoin. It's a negative sum game. I think it's really something that we're trying to bring as a positive sum game to borrowing against your Bitcoin and really using it for yield. So that's really our vision, or that's what we're going to achieve.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. This was honestly amazing. I personally learned so much from this. But I do think that we probably should wrap up since we all have kind of just things to get to throughout the rest of the day. But I did want to just give a shout out to everybody here. First of all, thank you so much, Piyush. Thank you so much, Sid. You guys are
Thanks, guys.
amazing. It's always so nice chatting with you guys. It's always so refreshing. I feel like I learned so much. Andrew, you already know how I feel about you. Salem, shout out to you, my friend. Thank you guys so much for staying here and listening throughout the whole thing. Zenith, really good to see you, my friend. It's been a while. Rems, shout out to you, my friend. My new friend, Constant, good to see you. It's been so long. Jason, our favorite moderator. Amazing to have you as always. David, shout out to you. Gideon, shout out to you. Gideon, by the way, check your DMs. I did not DM first, by the way, just stating that. But Gideon, please do check your DMs, my friend. I'm trying to help you with your Zeely issues. Zach, shout out to you for being here this whole time. Rye, shout out to you. Who else do we have here? Flying Fee. John, shout out to you as well. Black Ion, Ioner, shout out to you. Mr. Jorge, Red Frog, Zaps, Hydro, Crypto, Joe, Igor, Dale or Dale, I don't know how to say that. Paul, shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for being here. And hopefully we'll see you guys in the next one. If you guys actually have suggestions about, different topics that you guys would like us to cover, please do share them with us on Discord, and we can we can have those discussions. We obviously really love when the community comes up and just contributes to the conversation. So if there are topics that you guys feel would resonate with you in that regard, please do share them with us, because we would love to absolutely have you guys come up and chat with us more. But this was obviously a very educational space about stable coins in general. So I personally learned so much, and it's always appreciated having the Bima team up here. But yeah, guys, I guess like a couple other community things too. Like I mentioned, we will be having a new sprint starting as of next week. I'm not sure on the exact date, but stay tuned for Discord announcements, and you guys will know very shortly. We do have two also I'd say actually three pretty big like giveaway-esque campaigns that we'll be running. So stay tuned for that as well over the course of the next month. Again, just a token of our appreciation for the community. And then, yeah, I honestly think that's it. For anything else community related, you guys know that I put out like a weekly update pretty much every week. So that should pretty much cover all the information that you need to know. But of course, if you guys have any questions, you know where to reach me, you know where to reach the mods. Um, but yeah, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in once again. Sid, shout out to you. Piyush left, but shout out to you. Andrew, shout out to you as well. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Take care, guys.
Thanks for having us. Thank you guys. See you. Bye bye.
Thanks for coming on, guys. Stay back, everybody.